that the fact that you mentioned you have a son, in our interview, we never did complete your educational level, your educational attainments completely. Well, you matriculated from Susquehanna University, did you say, in the spring of 1915?
I graduated.
Yes.
In the spring of 1915.
Yeah, and you graduated. Okay. Then you went into your other professional work, which you outlined. When did you return to Susquehanna to get your master's degree?
While I was the 2 years that I taught at Huntington, I did summer work at Susquehanna and then correspondence work.
While you were teaching at Huntington.
And,
and you met the requirements for your master's degree during that 2-year period.
Yes. And then...
when did you get your degree? When was it conferred?
The degree was conferred, it was actually conferred to me in 1920 because I was away in the service. But I had completed the work in 1917.
Mm-hmm. So the date of the degree is 1920.
Yes, the date of it.
That's interesting. In fact, you mentioned being in the service. That's a whole other interview. We can't possibly cover all the things of interest in this one short interview. But then, of course, you had a wife and you had your family. Would you tell us about that?
Well, while at Huntington, I married the secretary to the superintendent of schools.
That's good.
Kate Figard.
How's her last name pronounced?
Figard, F-I-G-A-R-D, Figard.
Figard.
And she was, I think, the most wonderful person that I ever knew. She was talented, capable, a tremendous public speaker with lots of humor.
Good, good.
And
when did you get married to
on
Kate?
the 17th of August, 1917.
Before you went to the service?
Yes. And on the 19th, I left for camp. So we didn't have much of a honeymoon.
No, not then at least. Not then. And then, how did your family come about?
Well, she continued as secretary.
At the school?
And David was born 1920. See, I was out of the service on January 1st, 1919.
Honorably discharged. And then your first, you had more than one child.
No.
Your son David Gross was born in 1920. What was the month and the day?
He was born April 6th.
April 6, 1920. And she continued, after your son was born, did she continue to work after your son was, say, 6 months old, or?
No, when I came back from the service, I got the position at North Braddock, Scott High.
Allegheny County.
And we moved out there, and she didn't continue.
I see. So then she was a mother and a housewife and probably a community leader.
And she became very, very active in church activities out there. And
when did Kate pass away?
She died in 1952 on the 18th of February.
While you were still in Johnstown?
Yes. And in 1954, I married Frances Geiger from Phoenixville. Now, I want to say this. Frances Geiger and my wife were very close friends for many years. And I married her. She only lived 10 years.
And when did she pass away? Frances Geiger. When did she pass away?
She passed away in July 26th, 1964.
That's too bad. you've been living in your present house. We filmed your house. We made a little television program of your house to show where you presently live, so future generations will have an approximate knowledge of where you do presently live. And
well, if you want to know a little more, see, I enlisted in the Naval Air Service.
you were already finished with Susquehanna, and you were teaching in
I was
Huntington.
teaching. And
You enlisted in the Naval Air Service.
Air Service.
Hmm.
And went to basic training at MIT and flying at Pensacola,
Florida.
Florida Air Base.
Mm-hmm. Air Station, I think it's referred to, isn't
Beg
it?
pardon?
Pensacola Air Station.
Pensacola.
Yes.
And had my flying instructions there, but I didn't get abroad.
You didn't get? Did you get your wings? Did you earn your wings at
I had my
Pensacola?
wings. I had my wings.
And were you in the Naval Air Service then?
Yeah. And then after we graduated, well, we were separated, and I believe about 40 or 50 were sent abroad, and I was sent back to Massachusetts Institute of Technology as a teacher. Where
An
I taught,
instructor in what?
well, instructor in trigonometry and naval navigation, of which I didn't know much.
That's all right. You perhaps heard the old story of the ship's captain who every night would go in his room and lock his room and go to his safe and open up a little black box. And when he died, they were always curious what was in that little black box. And they went in the black box and they got out a piece of paper that said, "Port is left side, starboard is right side." So,
Well,
you have to know that much.
there I stayed until the war ended, and I was discharged on the 1st of January.
From MIT.
Well, from the Navy.
Yes, but I mean,
And
you
from
left,
MIT. That was the Navy program at MIT.
and you were an instructor
They
right
told
up to the time you were honorably separated from
Yeah,
the service.
yeah,
How did you return from MIT? By train?
by train.
Did you get a welcoming in Beavertown Station when you
No,
finally
I
arrived?
went directly to Huntington.
Oh, that's right. You weren't living in Beavertown at that
Right.
time. I'm sorry about that. Well, it's intriguing that you were in the flying service and Will Rogers landed.
Well, the planes were pretty crude in my day.
But I mean, did you discuss with Will Rogers the fact that you had this
I
flying
don't think
background?
so, no.
It was too brief a,
No,
too brief a,
too brief an encounter. No.
yes, sir. Well, we're going to pause again, and we're going to conclude our interview in just a few moments. But right now, we're just going to pause. As you hear the cuckoo clock in the background, Ira, it's now 10 o'clock in the evening, and we are going to conclude this particular interview here in just a few moments, but perhaps we can indulge on your services to have you come back again.
Well, sometime.
Yeah, I'd appreciate it if you would, because you've uncovered so many areas that I'd like to talk to you about, more on Coonhoven and more on, well, so many different things. But just to sort of wrap up this first interview, you were born 90 years ago, and you already indicated as a child your first memory were the lantern-carrying miners going on the Shawverville Road to their work. You certainly must have many thoughts and memories of the good things that have occurred and existed in Beavertown. And I wonder if you might share with us now how, from your childhood and through your life, how Beavertown has changed, and some of the things that were here that are no longer here, and how you regard Beavertown today. Let's just start back with your early childhood.
Well, I think I told you we attended school here, and I think we had a very excellent school. One thing we didn't have all the curricula that they have now. For instance, we certainly missed having sex education.
My
We
goodness.
didn't have that.
Didn't you have outside toilets there?
Oh yes, we had outside toilets.
Well, wasn't that a sex education course of sorts?
No, it wasn't. You know, we didn't have sex education. And you know, I can't remember, and I tried to think of it for several days. I can't remember any person, any girl in our younger sex, in Beavertown, that had to get married or was pregnant before marriage. Can't remember it. There was, sex was not part of our life. We had sex was different. We had fun.
Ring tag? Did you
We
play
had ring
tag?
tag at festivals, but more specifically, skating was a big thing in the wintertime. And roaming the woods in the summertime, particularly hunting snakes. We just loved to hunt snakes in the summertime, we boys. And we had house parties, lots of them, but there was never anything immoral ever talked about.
Probably wasn't even in your perception.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. Just, nobody ever thought about it. And that's, this is, I hope you don't record this. That's why in my school, I refused to permit any sex education. I wouldn't have it.
In your Johnstown City schools.
Because it always reminded me of the old story that I heard as a child. When the mother went out of the house and was to be going a little while, she told her small child, now I'm going out, and while I'm going, don't poke beans up your nose. Did you ever hear that? Don't poke beans up your nose. When she came back, the child had both nostrils stuffed with beans. When you tell a youngster, 10, 12 years of age, that sex is a terrible thing, he's going to experience it. He wants to know what's so terrible about it. I'm opposed to it terribly.